Now to today's focus, and it was back in 1988, in fact, that an anti-apartheid campaigner, Dulcie September, was assassinated in downtown Paris. 3 bullets at point-blank range. Now, she was the representative of Nelson Mandela's ANC in France, and she was also investigating an alleged illegal arms trade between Paris and Pretoria. Well, 30 years later, though, well, her killing remains unpunished, despite the declassification of military archives, which indeed point to rather a murky relationship between France and South Africa's apartheid regime of the time. Well, from Cape Town, France 24's Caroline Dumais and Stefan Carstens have this report.
On March 29, 1988, anti-apartheid activist Dulcie September was killed in the heart of Paris. She was representing the movement of Nelson Mandela in France. This is one of her last interviews.
Dans les prochains mois à venir, nous allons intensifier nos actions, tant sur le plan politique que militaire, à l'intérieur même de l'Afrique du Sud.
Est-ce que cela passe par le terrorisme?
Nous n'acceptons pas ce mot. C'est le régime sud-africain qui est terroriste. Nous, notre action est politique et militaire.
Dulcie was a teacher. She was born in Cape Town in 1935. She fought against the apartheid regime and was imprisoned for 5 years before seeking refuge in France, where she was assassinated. 30 years later, South Africans are still asking why. Fort Hare University is where Nelson Mandela studied. Today, it is where the historical records of the African National Congress are stored. Anybody can consult these documents from the French mission that Dulcie September led.
Now let's have a look here.
This collection shows that Dulcie September was not just an ANC representative. She was intensely investigating clandestine arms deals between Paris and Pretoria. She found out, for instance, that to avoid the arms embargo, the French were sending military equipment using the harbour of Bordeaux.
And through this French mission and through what we are getting out of this, we can now understand why the South African apartheid government was so powerful in terms of the military equipments. Dulcie September managed not just to identify that, but also to tell people of the world that South Africa and France, this is what they are doing.
Was she killed because she knew too much? Her friends have not forgotten. In Betty's lounge, Dulcie's photograph is still prominent. They were activists together. They even shared a prison cell. Betty knows Dulcie was incorruptible.
If what she saw was red, there was no way they were going to convince her that it was pink, you know.
Dulcie would never have accepted that Paris was an arms trade capital, that the South African embassy was full of diplomats who fueled the war machine of apartheid, with tacit approval of French authorities that were renewing diplomatic visas. For South African researchers, the French did not respect any embargo. Declassified military archives today show that Paris and Pretoria were developing weapons together.
And we know about the fact that France also supplied and made available its most sophisticated missile system, the Mistral, in the late 1980s to South Africa, even before it was given to the French military. All of this is an indication of the kind of environment in which Dulcie September was operating. If her investigations, the investigations of her comrades, her French comrades in the trade union and elsewhere, were leading to exposing or uncovering elements of this network, it would not only have massive repercussions for apartheid South Africa, it would have direct political repercussions in France for the intelligence.
When in 1994 Nelson Mandela took over the country, he knew that the military planes honouring him and the Rainbow Nation used French technology. Relations between the two armies and the two secret service agencies did not evaporate with the ANC coming to power. On the contrary, as the regime changed, the relations intensified, and after 10 years of investigations that led nowhere, the murder of Dulcie September was soon relegated to history. But South Africans refused to sweep the murder under the carpet. Journalists like Evelyn still work on it after 30 years. Her new book is explosive. She points out the loopholes of the investigations and even suggests that the French Secret Service could be implicated in the murder of Dulcie, as well as the murder of others who denounced weapon trafficking.
Every time there is something written that points to other tracks. This is not picked up in France, not by public opinion, not by media, and not by authorities. So I get the feeling that people are in France, and I hope that I can be corrected. But the feeling that I get is that people in France just don't want to know about this. So I just don't understand it, that silence.
Dulcie's family do not understand either. Her nephew, Michael, won't give up. He wonders why 30 years later the crime is still a mystery.
I would like to know the truth, yes. And if that takes the rest of my life, then so be it.
As new elements have emerged in the last 30 years, friends and family want Dulcie September's case reopened. And if it is not possible in France, they will try to do it in their own country.